Hello and welcome to the broadcast. These are the top stories on NTV tonight.
Tonight, a new twist in the Mary Wambui murder saga.
Our relationship was so good. We had nothing, but we loved each other. We lived in a single room. Ilikuwa inatukost 1500. Na kuna wakati tulikuwa hata na shida ya kulipa hiyo nyumba ya 1500.
Another woman claiming to be Joseph's first wife emerges.
Also tonight, leave the union leadership or get out of the teaching service. The conciliator's harsh recommendation.
Plus, government orders recall of Nutty's peanut butter over aflatoxin contamination.
Plus, Ekeza Sacco chairman David Ngari lied to distraught members over frozen accounts.
Contrary to claims by the Ekeza chairman David Ngari that the ministry froze the bank accounts of Ekeza, thereby inhibiting him from paying. The truth is that the accounts have been and still are operating.
And 4 more Saccos are being investigated.
NTV Tonight with Mark Masai and Smriti Vidyarthi.
We're glad you found time to join us, and our sign language interpreter tonight is Flora Atieno.
To our top story, a woman claiming to be the first wife to Joseph Kori, who's accused of killing his wife alongside his mistress, says that she does not believe that her husband committed the crime.
Grace Wanjiku accuses the deceased, Mary Wambui, of breaking up her marriage to Kori, adding that he had already paid dowry before he neglected her and their daughter.
Charity Mwangi spoke to Grace Wanjiku, who reveals the philandering ways of Kori, whose life changed after fortunes grew.
Joseph Kori's Facebook profile describes his love life as complicated. His real life, exactly that. Mary Wambui, the woman he called wife and lived with, now dead. Judy Wangoi, the daring mistress, and now he's co-accused in the murder case. Enters Grace Wanjiku. Wanjiku, who is in her late 30s, operates a boutique in Kayole. She claims to be Kori's first wife and the mother of his daughter. She says she knew the man before he became rich.
We had nothing, but we loved each other. We lived in a single room. Ilikuwa inatukost 1500. Na kuna wakati tulikuwa hata na shida ya kulipa hiyo nyumba ya 1500.
Wanjiku and Kori initially earned a living by repackaging rice. Kori would then venture into the timber business financed by Wanjiku's savings. She says their first child, a boy, died at birth before their daughter was born. Their life, she beams, was improving.
At least my husband alikuwa na make good enough money ambapo tuliweza kutoka hata ile bed sitter tukaenda 2 bedroom. Nilikuwa nahitaji msichana wa kazi ya 7500 hapa Kayole tu.
Their business grew further when Kori got a 53 million shillings government tender to supply electricity poles. Kori's business kept him away from the home for days, which Wanjiku says was the beginning of their separation. A text message confirmed her fears.
Nikatumiwa namba 2 za simu. Nikaambiwa huyu ni yule wanga na bwana yako, Mary.
Wanjiku's attempt to protect her family was met with a demand from Kori to apologize to the woman who he claimed was a business associate.
I took the phone and I was like, I'm sorry. Sikuwa najua unapatianga bwana yangu orders. Because my husband was telling me, unakula juu ya huyo mama. Yeye ndiye analeta food on the table for you na unamtusi. I don't know, kuliendaje, juu sikuwa ifikiria. Ati mimi ningeambiwa na mume wangu nipigie mpango wa kando.
Wanjiku claims how that apology emboldened the woman, who even dared her to a showdown for Kori to decide who he preferred. She declined. It was the last time she heard from Wambui, and then she learned about her death and the circumstances surrounding it.
Yani unakuwa tu confused hata sijui unaweza ukarespond useme aje. But when I spoke to my friends, wakaniambia unawezaje shiko ambiwa na mpango wa kando wa bwanako uende ummeet Nakuru na ni place ijulikane. What if ukienda hapo like you're shot dead ama mwagiliwe acid? So I never went to meet her.
Wanjiku has forgiven her husband and the woman who made the last decade of her life a living hell. She says she supports her husband and wishes the children of the late Wamboi well.
Joseph Kori was my husband. Namuita bwanangu juu amenitolea mahari. Na hatuwezi change that. Hata kama alinibetray, he's my husband. He has never laid a hand on me. And hii kesi venye inaendelea, I don't understand how he's mixed up in the middle of that. He loves too hard. That is his downfall.
The community here in Kayole has been instrumental in helping Grace Wanjiku adjust to her new life, all the while maintaining her sanity. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
If you want to get more details on this story, you can get it on tomorrow's Daily Nation, a story by Stella Cherono. Make sure you get a copy of that tomorrow.
Right, to other stories making headlines today. A conciliation team that's been mediating a dispute between the Kenya National Union of Teachers and the Teachers Service Commission has recommended that head teachers and their deputies, who also serve as union officials, be released from service.
Alternatively, the recommendations there are that the heads relinquish their elective posts and serve the employer to avoid conflict of interest in execution of their duties. Kaltun Jama has the details.
Kenyans are expecting.
The conciliation team was appointed to mediate between the teachers' union and the employer as a last-ditch effort to avert teachers' strike over contagious transfer of school heads. NAT had accused TSC of acting in a bad faith by transferring teachers outside an existing CBA and the Code of Regulations. The 9-member team led by Charles Maranga recommended that TSC continues with the transfer of head teachers and administrators who are not union officials, strictly in accordance with the Code of Regulations for teachers. But in a win for the union, the team said the report table in court that transfers of union officials be restricted within their locality until the end of their current term. The team absolved TSC of any blame on the transfer of teachers, saying they were lawful, procedural, and within the terms of the employment contracts. However, the conciliator wants the TSC to continue consulting NAT when making the transfers for good industrial relations. NAT had complained that 3,094 teachers had been transferred, but only 278 appealed or filed for review through NAT, and among them were 85 who are union leaders.
Well, that story is the subject of our opinion count, and tonight we're asking, do you support the recommendation that school heads should cease being union officials?
There you have it, the accounts that you can write us through. That is at NTV Kenya, at Mark Masai, at Smriti Vidyarthi, and you can SMS 20686. Do you support the recommendation that school heads should cease being union officials? From nuts to what people are going nuts about, and this is the Ministry of Health, which has ordered for a recall of Nutty's peanut butter, which I actually have at home,
so do I,
from the market following a high aflatoxin contamination.
Well, the order came after tests on the products indicated that they contained aflatoxin levels that were 10 times over the allowed limit. NTV's Brenda Wanga reports.
Today morning, and the brand of peanut butter, now declared unfit for human consumption, was still on the shelves of various supermarkets within the CBD in Nairobi, but that wasn't to last for long. A directive from the Director of Public Health, Dr. Kefa Ombacho, has instructed all traders to withdraw the affected batch of peanut butter and the retesting of other batches of the same product. The recall, the result of tests carried out on random samples of the 800 grams jar of Nutty's peanut butter. The test triggered by contamination of the butter in Nandi County. The government chemist report on the analysis revealed that the peanut butter had higher than normal levels of aflatoxins. The levels found in the peanut butter were 24.08 parts per billion, 14 times more than the allowed limit, making the product unfit for human consumption. The company that manufactures the butter, Jetlack Foods, says it hasn't received the communication declaring their product unfit for human consumption. The company, however, says it is investigating the issue. Large doses of aflatoxins can cause acute poisoning that can be life-threatening through liver damage. Efforts to get the Kenya Bureau of Standards to explain how the contaminated products were allowed into the market despite being unsafe were futile as phone calls to the management went unanswered. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
And aflatoxin is defined as any of a class of toxic compounds produced by certain molds found in foods, which can cause, as Brenda said, liver damage. So really it is created or produced by certain molds found in foods.
So if you have it at home, straight to the bin.
Indeed.
And now to fighting terrorism. The cabinet has approved the construction of a center that will train police and the military in detecting and disarming improvised explosives used by terrorists.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who chaired the first cabinet meeting this year, said the Counter-Improvised Explosive Device Center will equip the Kenya Defence Forces personnel with the knowledge and technology to robustly detect and safely disarm IEDs.
The center, which will be a constituent college of the International Peace Support Training Center, comes in the wake of the government's response to the terror that has hit various parts of the country.
President Kenyatta said the CIED Center will be useful, especially for the period that the KDF remains in Somalia, where IEDs are often used by the Al-Shabaab militia.
The cabinet has also approved an agreement where Germany has offered to donate approximately 208 million shillings for the construction of the facility.
Now, civilian firearm holders will undergo fresh mandatory vetting for renewed licenses and permits starting Monday.
The Firearms Licensing Board will conduct the exercise for 4 days, after which those verified will undergo a gun ballistic analysis at the Directorate of Criminal Investigations headquarters.
The National Gun Owners Association withdrew an injunction today barring the process after a meeting with Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i.
NTV's Dennis Okari looks at what you need to do if you are a licensed gun holder.
Firearm licensed holders in Nairobi will be required to appear before a vetting panel from Monday, February 4th to 7th of March. The requirements for this fresh vetting include all supporting documents for all licenses acquired and all firearms and ammunition an individual has.
We will be doing it at the Firearm Licensing Board offices in Keleleshwa, but because the numbers might overwhelm, we are also expanding that vetting process to the police pavilion in South Sea.
Dates for vetting in other regions will be announced later. Licensed holders have been given an online link to book their vetting appointments, but security officers from the Kenya Defence Forces, National Police Service, Kenya Prison Service, Kenya Wildlife Service, National Intelligence Service, Kenya Forest Service and other senior government officials from the security sector will be exempted from vetting and will therefore not be required to do any bookings. However, the officials will fill forms where they will be given a unique identification number from the vetting venue at the police pavilion in South Sea, Nairobi, and then proceed to the DCI for ballistic analysis. Ballistic analysis test will cost 2,000 shillings, while the new smart card will cost 5,000 shillings and will be paid upon collection of the card. The vetting exercise of all firearm certificate holders is mandatory after CS Fred Matiang'i issued a directive for fresh vetting to establish and monitor a centralized electronic register of all private citizens holding firearms. Dennis Okari, NTV.
A High Court ruling in favor of a patient who was a victim of negligence by medics is likely to be a turning point in the practice of medicine.
Justice David Odunga found Nairobi Hospital and an anaesthetist guilty of negligence and awarded the patient more than 44 million shillings and 2 million shillings to his parents in damages.
While this ruling is supported by findings from the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board, Ken Mijungu reports that it is likely to open a floodgate of cases, some of which could have easily slid away without much attention.
At the end of their training, which in some cases spans 7 years, medical practitioners swear to uphold specific ethical standards which going forward guides their practice of medicine. But it's this oath that ultimately becomes their undoing, especially when caught on the wrong side of professionalism. This is the story of a 32-year-old who 15 years ago was the star of his school on the pitch and in class. An accidental injury during a routine game of basketball changed Jacob Ondeko's life forever and for the worse. Ondeko suffered a nose injury when a rival player elbowed him. 3 days later, he was in hospital to correct the damage. This was where the nightmare began. Negligence on the part of the anesthetist, one Dr. Praxedis Mandu Okutoi, by failing to monitor Ondeko's progress during the procedure, was an oversight that almost killed him but nonetheless left him brain dead, cutting off his promising sports career and education at St. Mary's School. The matter went to court in 2008, parallel to the mandatory investigations by the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board. The parents of the patients, also doctors, sued both the hospital and the doctors, seeking damages for injuries suffered by their son during the botched surgery as a result of negligence on the part of a doctor. In 2012, one of the doctors sued attempted to stop the case after Justice Kalpana Rawal declined to strike out the entire case. But the presiding judge, Justice George Odunga, also declined to give the doctors the orders they had sought. The case will then be heard to conclusion. The outcome being 44.5 million shillings awarded to the patient, being the damages for pain, suffering, loss of amenities, cost of his minder, future medical expenses, and loss of learning. In addition, the parents were to be jointly awarded 2 million shillings. The court absolved the surgeon, holding that the injuries were not as a result of the procedure. The anesthetist, however, was found guilty of negligence. She is to pay the damages jointly with Kenya Hospital Association, which owns the Nairobi Hospital. The judge also ordered that the interest on the award begins running immediately until it's fully settled. The conclusion of this matter, however, opens up avenues for the pursuit of other cases where negligence may have caused lives or permanent injuries to patients. The Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board is usually the patient's first line of defense in such cases. The court being the last, KMPDB usually authors a report that is often authoritatively used in court by the judge to reach a decision, although not all cases end in court. Most matters are dealt with and concluded by the board, which also sanctions doctors, and punishment is not limited to fines alone. In extreme circumstances, the practicing certificate is cancelled and revoked. Ken Mijungu, NTV.
Mark, you know, no matter what action is taken and no matter how much money is paid to any side, nothing can turn back the fact that that boy, Jacob, has been left brain dead.
Hopefully, though, this goes some way in discouraging cases of negligence in practice of medicine.
All right. Let's move on to other stories, and the registration of Kenyans and foreigners in the National Integrated Identification Management System, that's NIMS, will begin in mid-February, and the pilot project will be done in 15 counties ahead of the wider rollout in March 2019.
Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho noted that all the information will be captured using biometric kits and data collection from fingerprints and facial features. Mel Miendo will be giving us some more details on this, but it could be seen as a measure in the wake of this terrorist attacks. And we've seen what Cabinet has just passed not too long ago in terms of a center to examine and make sure that our military is well equipped to detect the bombs or IEDs. And so this issue of having people registered is also in the same length and breadth of securing the nation.
Right, and many are asking what's the difference between the ID card and this, but Mel Miendo explains that too in her story.
In 2 weeks, the government is set to begin registration of Kenyans as a pilot of the National Integrated Identification Management System. This trial phase will be done in 15 counties. The government says the 6 billion shilling project, which it has been discussing for months, has been legislated and will ensure that every registered Kenyan has a Huduma card. This is set to become the source of all information carried in an individual's personal documents in the government systems.
You will only have 2 documents. The one that is a single source of truth and the other one which is your passport.
Information will be captured by use of biometric kits and data capture forms. These will require one's biodata, including name, citizenship, parents' details, education details, agricultural activities and employment status. One will also need to present their birth certificate, identification card number, driving license number, KRA PIN, NHIF and NSSF details.
If you go to an NSSF building, you give your Huduma number, then you will not have to remember what your NSSF number was because it is inbuilt.
The registration will not be limited to adults.
We will capture the one-off fingerprints from year 6 when we go for mass registration. Then we will never want your fingerprints ever again.
The Interior Ministry says that all the details captured in the registration will be consolidated, after which the biometric kits are to be left with assistant chiefs to record births and deaths.
We have that 1,500 biometric kits with us, with all the accessories, and they have been supplied by a company called Idemia, and the software is locally being developed. We are not buying software.
Mel Miendo, NTV.
Well, just a recap of our Opinion Counts question. Earlier, we told you of the recommendations that are being given out, and one of them is that the school heads should cease being union officials, and we asked whether you support this recommendation. And just briefly put, Isaac Okoni, he says school heads are not factory floor workers to belong in a labor union. So you basically support the decision there, or recommendation to have them, if they're head teachers or deputy head teachers, not to be part of the union in your view. It's a move that they say, the recommendation being put forward to avoid conflict of interest.
Right, and do send us more of your contributions to that question at Smriti Vidyarthi, at Mark Masai and at NTV Kenya. All right, we are just about to hit 20 past the hour. Do stay with us. There's more coming up after this break.
Mark, you may remember that 10 years ago today, Kenya was hit by a tragedy, one that saw nearly 200 people killed and at least 100 maimed after an oil tanker exploded at Sachangwan area along the Nakuru-Eldoret highway.
And today, the 30 million shilling compensation promised by then-President Mwai Kibaki's administration has never been fulfilled, according to some of the bereaved families.
They say they've had to endure a difficult decade, having either lost loved ones or being scarred, all the while hanging on to the hope that the gravity of the situation would reach the high officers for action.
Well, these were some of the sentiments shared at a memorial service which was conducted at the mass grave in Sachangwan.
Wenye walifiwa na marafiki zao na watoto wao na wapa pole, iwe onyo kwa mwananchi yote katika Kenya. Akiona roli la mafuta, hata kama ni mafuta ya salad ya kukula, asikaribie.
All right, elsewhere, the Kabazi ward member of County Assembly, Peter Mbai, has been detained for the second day alongside 8 other suspects following Wednesday's fracas in Solai.
Victims of the Patel Dam tragedy had clashed with the police who had stopped their meeting. The 9 will remain in custody as police investigate Wednesday's chaos.
The opinion in the Daily Nation of yesterday.
The suspect, among them Kabazi member of County Assembly Peter Mbai, appeared before resident magistrate Yvonne Katambi. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations say the 9 were being queried on the offence of incitement to violence, malicious damage of property and arson. This is after Wednesday's clash between the police and survivors of the Patel Dam tragedy when a meeting they had scheduled failed to take place. The DCI asked for 10 more days to complete investigations, during which more arrests could be made.
Politics of Solai Dam.
The defense lawyer, however, argued that the police were abusing their powers by arresting the suspects and that powerful government officers were being used to frustrate the MCA, who has been a sharp critic of how government officials handled the welfare of those affected by the dam tragedy.
If they were holding counts, we could have been persuaded. But as we are, Your Honor, there's absolutely nothing. Your Honor, I urge you to release the accused persons.
The resident magistrate ordered that the suspects remain in police custody until Friday morning, when they should be presented to the court.
I will go through the said application and consider the said submissions further and deliver my ruling on the 1st of February 2019 at 9 a.m. In the meantime, the suspects will be held at the Njoro police station until tomorrow morning.
The suspects are currently being held at the Njoro police station. Bridget Ngana, NTV, Nakuru.
Now, police want the court to allow investigators to continue holding 6 officials from the National Transport and Safety Authority arrested yesterday.
The 6 are being investigated for terrorism-related offences, having been arrested in connection with the car that was used in the Dusit D2 complex terrorist attack.
In an affidavit filed at the Chief Magistrate Court, anti-terror police want the court to issue orders allowing them to continue holding 6 NTSA officials. The 6 include Anthony Kadu, who works at the NTSA Department of Registration and Licensing. Kadu is believed to have requested Agustin Musembi, who is also in police custody, to reissue motor vehicle registration plate number KCN 340E to a Toyota Raktiz car, which was used by the attackers at the Dusit D2 complex. The other suspect is the Director of Registration and Licensing, Jacqueline Githinji, who sanctions processing of vehicle plate numbers. Also in custody is the Deputy Director in charge of Registration and Licensing, Cosmas Ngeso, and Stephen Mbaka, who is a clerical officer in charge of dispatching number plates. The 6th respondent is Charles Ndungu, also a clerical officer in the Department of Logbook Transfer. All the respondents were arrested yesterday at the NTSA offices. They are believed to be part of a cartel involved in the making of fake motor vehicle license plates. ATPU wants the suspects held for 30 days to enable completion of investigations. The 6 NTSA officials were arraigned in court today but did not take a plea. Vincent Odur, NTV.
A senior police officer has been convicted for causing grievous bodily harm to a hawker after he physically assaulted him in 2014.
But the principal magistrate has released Inspector Gregory Wabwire on a cash bail of 100,000 shillings. The sentencing has been set for February 14th, where a probation report is to be filed in court.
The incident took place in December 31st, 2011, when Wabwire had ordered Munyoki, an egg hawker, to move a hand cart that was blocking the road and parked in front of his chicken shed.
Oh, and Dominic tried to explain to the officer that the cart was not his. The officer took Munyoki to his chief's camp at Huruma and allegedly beat him several times with a metal bar, resulting in several injuries and a fracture on his leg. Now, Hussein Abdirahman, a member of the Wajir County Assembly, was in court today charged with assaulting a Kenya Bureau of Statistics official who was conducting a mapping exercise for Wajir South and East constituencies ahead of the much-anticipated census in August.
The ward representative for Habaswein was released on a 20,000 shillings bond by Mandera Court, and the case will be mentioned on the 12th of February. Two other MCAs who were arrested alongside Abdirahman, Mahat Rashid of Ibrahim Ure Ward and Adan Buno, the Doda Jibula Ward representative, were released after they were held briefly at the Mandera police station.
The three opposed to the mapping exercise, which places their wards in Wajir East constituency. Now, they want their wards to be featured in Wajir South constituency ahead of the census.
Tunasema tunataka kuandikishwa kama wote Wajir South. Maana ward yetu ni ya Ibrahim Ure. Ibrahim Ure ward, debe ya kupigia kura inawekwa katika Bulohodhan dispensary.
A woman is nursing serious injuries at Matata Nursing Home in Kisii after she was allegedly assaulted by Kisii County government officials.
Anne Oginga, alongside 7 of her colleagues, were roughed up over a disagreement between the county government and a Chinese construction company, that's Third Engineering Bureau of China City, where they worked.
The company, which is constructing a section of the Kisumu-Kisii highway, has allegedly been receiving threats from the county over payments and has now closed its operations in Kisii.
County Askaris have also recently arrested 10 of the firm's workers, and Anne is now demanding for justice as she may not be able to fend for herself and her family for a while.
Napimbo ile ya jembe, mwingine akapiga hapa ngumu, wakanifuta wakaniingiza kwa gari, tena mlango ya gari akanipiga hapa tena, wakanisukuma, ikaanguka tena kwa watu walisaweka kwa gari.
Nimesikia county government ya Kisii wanadai maji nakimbia kwa mtoni, wanataka tununue. Tuwalipe tax ndio tuchote hiyo maji yao.
Now, a memorial service for the late William Okumu, who lost his life in the 14 Riverside terror attack, was held today at the St. Stephen ACK Church along Jogoo Road here in Nairobi.
43-year-old William Okumu was an accountant at Colgate-Palmolive, East Africa, where he had worked for over 20 years. Okumu has left behind a widow, Brenda Onziro, and 2 daughters.
He's among the 21 people who lost their lives in the attack, and Okumu will be buried on Saturday at his home in Chulambo, Nyamboyo in Kisumu County.
We say pole sana to the family of Okumu. We'll take another break here on NTV Tonight. The business news is up next with Julian Amboko. Stay with us.
are just in time for your daily look at the world of business. Welcome, I am Julian Amboko. The boards of the Commercial Bank of Africa, CBA, and the NIC Bank have given the green light for the planned merger, whose discussions commenced last month. The new entity is expected to commence operations in the third quarter of 2019, with 415 billion shillings worth of assets, displacing the Cooperative Bank as the third largest bank by asset base, according to the last financial reports. The 65 billion shilling deal will see CBA shareholders hold 53% of the new entity, with their counterparts in NIC holding the remaining 47%. The NIC Bank share closed Thursday's trading at 37 shillings and 75 cents, posting a 14% gain from Wednesday's closing. On Tuesday this week, the Central Bank of Kenya welcomed steps being taken by banks to merge of their own volition.
And while we are not quite married yet, the formalities have indeed begun. So today I'm delighted to say that we announce our intention to merge NIC Group PLC and CBA. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that the banking landscape in Kenya in recent years has evolved considerably, and scale is pivotal to success and growth.
Quite a deal there in the banking sector. Moving on, the government has refuted claims that Ekeza Sacco's accounts have been frozen, distancing itself from the position of the society's chairman, David Ngari alias Gakuyo, who claimed that the ministry had frozen them. Industry, Trade and Cooperative Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya has also instructed the Commissioner of Cooperatives to stop Ngari from auctioning his property through a court of law to allow for the completion of an ongoing inquiry into the Sacco in 3 weeks' time. Here's Lillian Kiaria with more about the deepening web of intrigues at the Trouble Society.
Sina uwezo wa kutoa pesa niwapatie, na yangu yenye mimi nafanya ni kuuza chochote ambacho niko nacho, ili kila mtu ambaye aliweka pesa yake kwa Sacco aweze kuchukua pesa zake.
This statement by David Ngare, Ekeza Sacco's chairman, who unlawfully used member savings to finance his real estate company, ruffled the ministry's feathers, compelling it to come out and clarify the matter.
Contrary to claims by the Ekeza chairman, David Ngari, that the ministry froze the bank accounts of Ekeza, thereby inhibiting him from paying, the truth is that the accounts have been and still are operating with the Commissioner of Cooperatives as a compulsory signatory. It is through this arrangement that the ministry has realized payments of Kenya shillings 116 million to over 2,000 members who have less than 75,000 in deposits.
Munya did not spare Gakuyo, who is also a bishop at the Calvary Chosen Center Church in Thika, poking holes at his questionable character.
I am not convinced that proceeds of the sale will be used to repay members. Therefore, I have instructed the Commissioner of Cooperatives to stop the sale through a court action to allow for completion of the inquiry and subsequent submission of findings to members in line with the Cooperative Societies Act.
The CS also pointed an accusing finger at mobile money operating companies, which he blamed for aiding the Sacco to conduct financial transactions even after the ministry had issued a directive to prevent the movement of funds.
I have therefore instructed the Commission of Cooperatives to file a complaint at the Communication Authority of Kenya in respect to mobile service providers that fail to honor such directives. There is a specific one, but it's the biggest mobile provider in the country.
The government has said that it is investigating 4 other Saccos which are said to have misappropriated members' funds and will give a conclusive report in the coming weeks. Lillian Kiarie, NTV.
And staying with matters safety and security, the bulk of businesses in Africa have not invested enough to effectively protect themselves against cybercrime. A day after the Directorate of Criminal Investigations published a list of 130 suspects wanted in connection with electronic fraud, Victor Kiprop takes a look at the state of security against cybercrime and gives you a pulse of the situation on the ground.
Over the last decade, Kenya has made a name for itself as the cradle of technological innovation in Africa, consistently outpacing its peers in terms of developing and adopting new technologies. But in recent times, the country's financial sector has become a soft target for cyber criminals, with police records indicating that financial institutions lost about 17 billion shillings to cybercrime in 2016, up from 14 billion shillings in 2015.
Anybody who tells you they have 100% cybersecurity or cyber resilience, I will tell you that is not true. What you can do is to be able to limit or make it very difficult for hackers to be able to actually compromise the systems.
According to internet security experts, more than 70% of the local banking applications in Kenya are vulnerable, with many of them containing loopholes that hackers can use to access a customer's bank account. This is part of the reason the number of cyber attacks reported between June and September 2018 increased by more than tenfold to 6,300, up from just 539 recorded over a similar period the year before.
ICT vulnerabilities. In a sense, that is something that we need to be more careful about, and we need to strengthen, meaning to work to reduce those operational risks.
However, financial institutions are not the only ones at risk. About 8 to 10 Kenyans do not bother to check the terms and conditions when installing mobile phone applications.
Currently in Kenya, almost every mobile application holder is a data controller and a data processor, meaning they know how to collect the data and they can also use the data for whatever they're supposed to do. Customers need to be very careful who they're downloading the app from. If you want that app, download from the bank.
According to the 2017 Africa Cybersecurity Report, more than 90% of African businesses cannot effectively protect themselves from cyber attacks in a year when African countries lost more than $3.5 billion to cybercrime, up from $2 billion in 2016. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business, Nairobi.
Moving on. Workers at a Nairobi-based milling factory are protesting over unpaid dues for a one-year period. The 57 employees of Premier Flour Millers, renowned for making the chef flour, say the company has been reluctant to terminate their employment contracts owing to the challenge of footing their terminal dues, putting them in financial limbo. NTV reached out to the company chairman Diamond Lalji, who admitted the non-payment of dues. He says the company has been facing a liquidity squeeze for the last 13 months due to the inability to acquire import license to enable it to source raw materials. Lalji says that the company has been sourcing funds to clear the workers' arrears and is planning to pay them by the end of March when it is also projected to resume operations. On to the capital markets, and the Capital Markets Authority has extended the suspension from trading of the shares of listed retailer Deacons East Africa until the 30th of November 2019. Trading in the shares of the troubled retailer was first suspended last year on November 19th for 40 working days before being extended for another 10 days on the 17th of January 2019. This comes just 9 days after Deacon's creditors voted to keep the troubled retailer under administration, with the administrators indicating they were seeking in excess of 400 million shillings in fresh capital injection from shareholders. This transpired even as a tea exporting company, Apt Commodities, was this morning the first company to be admitted to the Nairobi Securities Exchange Incubation and Acceleration Program, IBUCA. The program is meant to stir the attractiveness of the exchange as a capital-raising platform for companies that often have little or misguided information on what it takes to get listed.
NTV Financial Report in association with the University of Nairobi.
And now we take a look at the financial report and how the day was trading at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We can observe that the stock market, the NSE 20 share index, closed the day at 2,958 points, gaining slightly from yesterday's close. The NSE all-share index was at 150.3 points, with the market capitalization standing at 2.2 trillion shillings and the equity turnover at 2.5 billion shillings. The bond turnover stood at 1.4 billion shillings, dropping from yesterday's close. Looking at the top movers, Safaricom took the day at 61.1 million shares, with Barclays Bank at 11.7 million shares and KCB at 9.4 million shares, followed by Equity Bank at 6.6 million shares. Looking at the biggest gainers of the day, NIC, as expected, closed the day at 33 shillings and 75 cents, up 15.98% from yesterday's close, followed closely by EGAD and Housing Finance Corporation, with the last one being the Acid Limited, which closed at 2 shillings and 87 cents, 4.7% up from yesterday's close. The day's biggest losers, we had Uchumi Supermarket, which closed at 82 cents, having fallen by 7.9%, and Kenya Power Limited coming second at 6.6%, with Flame Tree Group Holding closing at 2 shillings and 50 cents, down 5% from yesterday's close, and Orchards closing the day at 2 shillings and 81 cents, down 3.1% from yesterday. Looking at the forex market, the shilling closed the day at 100.9 units to the US dollar, and to the sterling pound it closed at 132 units, with the euro at 115.3 units. Coming closer home, the South African rand, the shilling closed at 7.4 units, with the Tanzanian shilling at 22.9 units, and the Uganda shilling at 36.3 units, and the Kenya shilling to the Rwandan franc at 8.8, having not changed from yesterday's close.
NTV Financial Report, in association with the University of Nairobi. Apply online through applications.unbi.ac.ke and be the first to secure admission at the most prestigious university in sub-Saharan Africa.
And that's it for the business news. Good evening.
Tonight, with Mark Masai and Smriti Vidyarthi.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, the multi-sectoral initiative against corruption has reiterated its commitment in the fight against the vice days after the National Anti-Corruption Conference, which was held at the Bomas of Kenya.
The team says it was in the process, of consolidating the commitments made by government and the private sector during the conference as it charts the way forward.
For the first time in the history of this nation, we actually had all three arms of government coming to answer questions directly from the Kenyan citizen. Because at Bomas we had more than 3,000 leaders from across all walks of life in the Republic. And you saw the president going there as the chief executive of the executive, being told, this is what the citizens are asking you to do directly. It has never happened before. Sometimes it goes to parliament, it goes to this organ and the other one. But this was the first public forum where the head of state would go and answer to the people, not to parliament, to all these other organs, but to the people. And I think this is something that may be going forward, the multi-sectoral initiative against corruption. We want to hold our leaders and our leadership to account.
All right, and at this point, we shift focus to the sports news. NTV's Sean Carter-Villas has that lined up for you.
I'm Sean Carter-Villas with the latest sports news. Now, Kenya is 2 aggregate wins away from qualifying for the African Nations Championship. That's CHAN for the first time. According to a draw done at the CAF headquarters in Cairo, the qualification for the 2020 African Nations Championship to be held in Ethiopia will now be zonal. First up, Kenya will take on Burundi in the first round of qualifiers. A win for the Stars will see them face either Tanzania or Sudan in the second round of qualifiers. The winning teams from the contest will qualify for the 5th edition of the CHAN tournament. CHAN is a tournament reserved exclusively for local-based players, actively featuring in their local national leagues. Now, the All Saints Cathedral was packed to the rafters as family and friends of the football journalist and player James Oduor celebrated his life in a memorial service. Oduor, popularly known as Odu Cobra, met his death in the 14 Riverside terrorist attack. He was the founder of the online football channel Wadao TV. James Oduor, popularly known as Odu Cobra, was a man of the people. Brought up in the Kariakor area of Nairobi, Odu grew up to be an influential figure in Kenyan football with his online football channel Wadao TV, becoming a voice of the masses regarding football. Odu Cobra and 20 others died during the Dusit D2 terrorist attack at 14 Riverside Drive on the 15th of January. And a huge congregation of family, friends and colleagues packed the All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi on Thursday for his Requiem Mass. Speaker after speaker spoke of Odu's influence on their lives, with his wife Diana Otieno capturing the somber mood.
I still pledge my love for you, and that nothing can come between us. We may be separated in body, but in spirit we are still a team. I am still your Mrs., and you're still my Mr., the father of my children.
The 35-year-old Odu Cobra was an employee in the customer care department at LG Electronics, but was also a passionate supporter of Kenyan football on and off the pitch. Oduo made the cut in the 2019 AIPS Sports Media Awards top 10 finalists from each continent in the sports blog category. His co-host Roy Keke Ochieng pledged to ensure that Wadao TV lived on.
I don't know how to express this one, but it's so sad. It's hurting. And as a football community, we've lost a big person. We've lost a rocking stone.
Odu Cobra is survived by his wife and two children, Janelle and Giovanni, and will be laid to rest this Saturday in Ukwala, Siaya County. Very sad, very, very big loss to the sporting community, of course. A very well-known football blogger. Rest in peace, Cobra. On to football, of course, well, staying with football, so to speak. Manchester United have reportedly reached an agreement with Shandong Luneng for the transfer of the Belgian midfielder Marouane Fellaini. But the deal could drag on with the transfer market in China open until February the 28th. The midfielder Fellaini enjoyed regular game time under former United bosses David Moyes, Louis van Gaal and Jose Mourinho, who used him as an auxiliary striker at times, but has been out of favour under interim manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. much about American sports, so don't ask me about the rules of American football.
I was going to ask you about the time because I heard it's in the wee hours of Monday.
It's in the wee hours, but the big thing about the Super Bowl is the entertainment, the halftime entertainment, and that's always a huge, huge thing.
And what else is huge about it is the number of sponsors and the money that's
the commercials. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, the amount of money they pay just for a spot at halftime. Yeah,
it is the biggest event, isn't it?
One of the biggest events. If you're American,
yeah,
you know, it all comes to a standstill if you're American. Right. Yeah, definitely.
We're looking forward to the highlights on that. That is Monday, of course. Thank you, Sean Carter-Villas, for the sport, and thank you for watching NTV Tonight. My name is Mark Masai. Have a good night.
Thanks to our sign language interpreter, Flora Atieno, and thanks very much to you. Good night. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi.